And I'd like to note that it's not a solo study. I got a lot of support from Dr. Brian Kuma, who is our team leader, but also from Stanley Lobby, who is the water engineer for water. So a background of this study, it's now well appreciated that water resources are very critical in promoting socio-economic development and ecological development of any country. However, we also note that it's a fixed resource, and that makes it very scarce. And taking Mpanga as a case study, we are seeing that this is being utilized for several purposes. We have water being used for hydropower. We have water being used for domestic purposes. We have water being used for agriculture, for irrigation. And so considering all that, we identify a problem of stiff competition between all these water users for the limited water resource. And on the right of the slide, we have the composition of the Mpanga catchment. And we have delineated it into 4 major sub-catchments. We have the upper catchment, or the upstream, which has majorly Kabarole district. And then further midstream, we have a bit of Chenjojo district, as well as Kamwenge. And then downstream or lower Mpanga, we have Chitagwenda and Ivanda district. And then the big vast is the Rushango catchment, which has Kazo, Chiruhura, a bit of Barara, and a bit of Uwejo. So we are seeing a problem that there's a very high rate of urbanization and population growth, which is about 3.1% averagely in the Mpanga catchment. But we also identify the influx of refugees in the region, in the districts of Chenjojo and others. And these have all put stress on the water resources. And when you couple this with the unplanned water use, it has led to the gradual decline of both the quality and the quantity of the water resources, the Mpanga catchment. And so this study is very essential for us to study the water quality, the water usage patterns, for us to be able to ensure that we can sustainably manage the water resource for future generations. So this study was the basis, or was the feeding information for the water demand allocation, which was done through modeling, Mike Hydro, and this was helping us to allocate the water resources across the different service levels. And on the right, this photo is a classic example of competing water users in the catchment. This is a photo taken from Chitagwenda district, and we can visibly see that even in the rural areas, you have animals competing for water with human beings, and you also have people washing at the same location, which can really bring out the problem that we have in the Mpanga catchment. So the objective of this study was majorly to obtain the total current and projected water demand in the Mpanga catchment, and this was considering a period of 40 years. And to execute this, we did specific objectives. One, to compute the domestic, livestock, fisheries, hydropower, irrigation, industrial, and inflow demand. And having computed this, we aggregated the water demand for the current year, which considered 2023. And with this, we're able to project the water demand for the future year, which is 2063, 40 years from the current year. And to have this done, we employed a number of methods. The first step was data collection. And our major informant or our major entry point were the district technical officers, who include the water officers, cultural officers, and the like. And from these, we're able to get information on each district concerning the population data, concerning the fish ponds, concerning the livestock, concerning the hydropower usage, industry, and also irrigation. And to couple this, we also included data from UBOS, the Uganda Bureau of Statistics, and other sources to have a very robust database. And with this data, we also did GIS mapping, which helped us to obtain the extent and composition of the Mpanga catchment. And we also used the water design manuals, especially the DWD Water Design Manual of 2013. And this helped us to obtain the per capita water demand for all the service levels. And then the total current demand, we got it by multiplying the per capita water demand times, for example, the population in the catchment. We multiply it by the per capita water consumption, which means water consumption per person per day. And this helped us to get the total domestic demand. We did that for all service levels, and we're able to get the total current demand for the current year, 2023. And then to get the future or projected demand, we had to get the sector growth rates from as well as from also different manuals and also different reports. For example, we could tell the population growth rate of each district using the UBOS statistics, and using that growth rate, we're able to project the current population of 2023 to 2063. But we also used other reports, for example, the sector reports for the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development, which helped us to obtain the growth rate, for example, for the hydropower development in the country. And with that, we're able to project the current hydropower demand to the future year of 2063. And from the analysis, or from the data we obtained, we're able to come out with good information, which can be summarized on these plotted graphs. The first is domestic demand on the extreme left, top left. And we are able to see that on this graph, Uganda district portrayed the highest domestic demand in the current year, which is about 7,000 cubic meters per day. And Barara had the lowest domestic demand, majorly because Barara is a very small fraction of the catchment, and therefore the demand from Barara, meaning domestic demand, would not be so much compared to other districts. And for the future year, we still have Uganda having the highest water demand, which is about 15,000 cubic meters per day, and still Mbarara with the lowest future domestic demand. And then for the livestock water demand, we did this by obtaining the livestock counts, again using the UBOS as well as the district information. And we're able to find how much water is needed to sustain the livestock in each district. And for the current year, which is 2023, we can see the greater Chiruhura, which has Chiruhura and Kazo, which had the highest water demand, about 5,000 cubic meters per day. And that can be explained because it's the cattle corridor, and generally it had a higher demand than other areas. However, in the future year, we had Chenjojo district having a higher water demand for the livestock, majorly because we identified a highly growing sector of piggery in Chenjojo district, which is likely to have a very high demand in the future of about of about 13,000 cubic meters per day. And then bottom left, we also assessed industrial demand. Of course, that's from industrial activity in the Mpanga Catchment. We have majorly tea factories and coffee, as well as mining for the Hima cement factory. And we're able to identify a gradual growth rate of the industrial sector, which can be shown in this graph here. We did the same for irrigation demand for the current and the future year. And for irrigation, we are seeing majorly small-scale irrigation schemes, coupled with the government programs like the U-Gift under the Ministry of Water and Environment. And this is the trend of irrigation in the catchment. We also assessed the environmental flow as 10% of the base monthly flow in the river, and we're able to obtain an oscillating pattern for the E-flow. We can see that the minimum is around July, while the maximum is in November, but it's showing a bimodal pattern with 2 peaks in the year. On the next slide, we have demand for fisheries and hydropower. We assessed this, though this is non-consumptive, meaning water does not really get consumed from the catchment, but rather stays in one area. And for fisheries demand, we assessed it by getting the number of fish ponds in every district and multiplying it by an average size of 50 square kilometers and a depth of 1.5 meters. So that gave us the volume of the fish pond, and we assumed 2 fishing regimes in a year, meaning the fish ponds would be emptied twice a year. So that gave us the demand for fisheries, which is shooting very sharply between 2023 and 2063. For hydropower, we have only one hydropower plant, which is the EMS Mpanga. However, considering the sector growth rates, we identified that there's likely to be growth of the hydropower demand from around 1.4 million cubic meters per day to around 1.5 million cubic meters per day for the future year. And combining or aggregating this demand for the whole Mpanga catchment, we're able to obtain an oscillating pattern for the total water demand in the Mpanga catchment. And on this graph, we can see it's oscillating between around 84,000 cubic meters per day for the month of July, which is the lowest. And the highest would be around 343,000 cubic meters per day in the month of November. And having projected this, we obtained a similar pattern for the future year 2063, which is also having 2 peaks in May and also November. And this is having the lowest reading in July 2063, which is 255,000 cubic meters per day, and November giving us around 514,000 cubic meters per day. And from this study, we're able to have a number of conclusions. Majorly that the water demand is most likely going to grow across all the consumer levels between 2023 and 2063. And this can all be attributed to the ripple effects of a high population growth rate, which can be seen across all the sectors. Secondly, we see that the total water demand in the catchment is projected to grow by more than double. That's about 159.1%, from an average of 66,350 cubic meters per day about 170,000 cubic meters per day over the 40 years from 2023 to 2063. And for us to note carefully is that the fisheries sector is rapidly growing in the Mpanga Catchment, and we identified the areas of Kamwenge and Chenjojo and Chitagwenda as having very many fish ponds, most of them accruing from reclamation of wetlands in the catchment. And from this study, we're able to have some recommendations to the authorities. One, as a ministry, we have the funds we have managed to map and profile the water users in the catchment. That's, of course, in partnership with some NGOs in the region. But with increased funding, we'd be able to have a more detailed database for us to know the illegal abstractors and where they are and how much they're abstracting. And secondly, we appreciate that there's development going on for. We appreciate the ongoing development and centralization of the WIS database, but we also recommend that this would be further improved. For example, if we have a water supply manual, which is like a map showing the water supply and how all regions are doing, we would have the same kind of approach for the water demand, and that way we can be able to locate and map the hotspots of water demand across the zone, but also the whole country. Thirdly, we also need to enforce environmental laws at the regional level so that we're able to control the widespread reclamation of wetlands. And these are being mainly reclaimed into farmlands and small-scale fisheries. And fourth, but very important, is forums such as this give us a chance to interact and share knowledge. And having more of these discussions would be very good for knowledge development and for the catchment as well. From this study, we also recommend more innovative use of water resources. And here we could consider things like rainwater harvesting and reuse of wastewater and other modern water use technologies. Yeah, and lastly, but not least, we have been able to carry out some nature-based solutions to restore degraded catchments, especially in the Mpanga catchment. And if we had more funding and more resources, we would upscale these measures in order to improve water security to meet the future demand. I'd like to appreciate or to acknowledge Water for People for their support to the zone for this research, as well as the FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. I also appreciate the Water Resources Institute for giving us this platform to share ideas. The Ministry of Water and Environment, which is my employer, as well as the UBOS, which gave us valuable data. Thank you very much. I submit.
Yeah, thank you very much, Andrew, for the presentation that has been made. And our colleagues online, this was part of a wider research trying to assess water resources availability, allocation, and management along River Mpanga. that is found in the western part of the country. So maybe I would hand over back to the Water Resources Institute to come in and moderate the question and answer. Yeah, thank you. I'm seeing a hand, Paul Lima.
Thank you very much indeed. Yes, I think, first of all, I thank the researchers for a very impressive presentation. However, I have one small question. I've not heard anything to do with climate change. Doesn't climate change affect either the recharge of the sources or the consumption or the availability or non-availability of the water we are trying to consider? Otherwise, I'm impressed. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Paul Lima. We are taking note of the questions and then we shall comprehensively answer the questions. Any other question, colleagues online? Any other questions? Yes, Miss Abigail.
Yes, doctor.
Yes, Mr. Robert. Yeah, kindly have the question
Hello.
submitted. Yes, Mr. Robert, you're loud and clear.
Yeah, thank you. I have two questions. Actually, one of them is touching on what the previous speaker just raised. Just as we could be knowing, there are two factors which have to be put into consideration: the impact of climate change and the land use availability. They significantly affect the water availability, and they look to be silent in this study. Secondly, the water demand is being presented in terms of districts. But when we are doing demands, we compare availability. And I didn't see the model. Maybe the presenter would do, maybe again present that slide with the model. I wanted to see how is he comparing districts, administrative boundaries in relation to catchments, because water availability can only be assessed in the form of a catchment, micro catchment, as we all know. But then he's presenting availability in terms of districts. Otherwise, thank you for the work done. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Robert. The question has been taken note of. Miss Abigail?
Okay, thank you, doctor. I don't know what I'm going to ask, whether it was part of the scope or it is outside, but I would like to know, do you think with the projected demand, do you think with the catchment restoration interventions or measures, do you think in those years we can be able, River Mpanga can be able to meet all those water demands with the restoration? Let's say, in case the restoration is 100%, do you think that River Mpanga can meet all those demands, water demands? Or we may need to look for other sources of water?
Yeah, thank you very much, Abigail, for that question. It has been taken note of. So we shall receive maybe more two questions, and then we shall have response from myself and Andrew before we can take up another round of questions. Mr. Nathan?
Okay, thank you, Doctor. Mine is similar to the current speaker. River Mpanga, if you have been able to observe it, whereas the researcher have gone ahead to project for more demands, I can see most of it is dying away. I thought I was expecting to see some good activities being done on River Mpanga, especially when you try to check around town where the river is busy, the banks, the buffer zones are dying away. I really want to see like more activities being done on River Mpanga, like desilting and maybe protecting the buffer zones, so that I read from it's a catchment zone in the mountains, so that we can have those projections with ease. Otherwise, I don't see that those projections will work when the river is dying away. Then here in the city, most times the leaders here, actually to some extent, they have boycotted the planting of trees around River Mpanga, yet the river is dying away. I would like to see like protecting the pollution of River Mpanga, because when you stand at some point, like say example, along Kampala Road, maybe at the bridge, you will see very many bottles flying in the water, trailing. So if there can be activities related to filtration of the river, then also activities like protecting the buffer zones, maybe putting the sieves to catch those pollutants. I beg to submit. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Nathan. I think we can have one last question from Enoch before we respond to some of the questions that have been raised. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Doctor. I want to thank you and Andrew and Lobby for these great findings we have got about water demand. We have hope that we shall have probably a presentation on water availability or water, how much is available vis-a-vis the water demand. However, I basically have 3 inquiries. The first one is to understand what could have dictated the choice of the 40-year projection. Like, why didn't we choose 30? Why didn't we choose 50? Could it have been dictated by some particular reasoning? Probably can be highlighted. And then I also want to look at the method that was used at the E-flow computation. Is it okay if probably because it would have been expected to be computed during the computation of water availability. And lastly, the final graph being shown, aggregated water demand, suggests that water demand is higher during the rainfall.
Nibala is presenting there. I sent Shaka link and I joined.
April, and I think October, November. Could there have been water demand is expected to be higher during rainy seasons, which would have been expected in reverse. And then during dry seasons, the water demand is low. Is there some reasons as to why it is happening that way within the catchment? Probably the team might have discussed about it. They could share it with us. And lastly, maybe a comment that probably for the presentation issue, some projections are shown to be on annual basis, others on monthly basis. I think it would have given us a better picture if we have used the same time step or time scale, so that can give us the picture at the end of the day. Thank you very much, team. We look forward to hearing from you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Enoch, for those questions. Before I invite Andrew to actually respond some of the questions, I will just provide some bit of overall guidance. some of the questions that have been raised by Enoch and then Nathan, Mr. Robert, and then Mr. Paul and Ms. Abigail. I'll just provide a bracketed overview response, and then we shall maybe zero down to some specific responses from Mr. Andrew. Now, now, first of all, why do we have a 40-year time horizon? And I think to me, as part of integrated water resources management, of course, the 40-year provides a much more realistic period, first of all, to have some of the policies implemented, assessing the impact, adjusting the strategies based on the changing circumstances. So it provides that kind of long-term realistic time horizon. And that is actually what basically informed our 40-year planning horizon. And then Mr. Nathan, of course, mentioned, raised some questions, more specifically on what the ministry is doing within the Mpanga Catchment. I would like to give you assurance that the ministry has actually quite done a lot within the Mpanga Catchment. First of all, we developed a catchment management plan that highlighted, mapped out hotspot areas, but also proposed remedial catchment management measures. This was developed in 2014, and we have actually gone ahead and implemented some of the remedial management measures. By the time we started implementing the remedial catchment management measures, the river system was actually in a much more dire state. The water levels had actually reduced within the Mpanga catchment. But when we started implementing some of the remedial catchment management measures, such as the soil and water conservation in the upstream part of the catchment, trying to delay water flowing through the river valley within the shortest period of time. So we have been able to delay it. We haven't covered the whole catchment. We've done pilots, and we have had positive impact in regards to the water quantity. From the surface water level observations that have been recorded since 2012, at least there has been a positive increment in the surface water level observations being recorded, and this has been testified by the hydroelectric power plant further downstream, that is in Chitagwenda district, where they are actually able witness that from 2012 and up to date, at least the water volumes have increased. Around 2013, 14, 15, they would actually shut down the hydroelectric power plant during the dry season because there was actually no water flowing within the river system. And this is an 18 megawatt power plant. So, but ever since started implementing the catchment management measures, they are able to generate power in the dry season. So at least there's been some positive impact of what the ministry has done within the Mpanga catchment. And then Mr. Robert, of course, there are some questions in regards to impact of climate change and land use on the availability of water. So this is actually part of the bigger study. This was actually a paper that has been written and is yet to be submitted for publications. It's part of the bigger study trying to assess the water resources availability, allocation within the Mpanga catchment. And we do put in mind, of course, climate change is a very critical variable. Land use change is also a very critical variable. So the findings of this study were actually part of that bigger study where we had the issues of climate change, land use coming in together to inform the bigger research findings. So let me invite Andrew to address some of the other specific questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Brian. I think that's quite elaborate. However, I just want to respond to Enoch about the about the E-flow computation. Well, like Doctor has said, this was part of a bigger study which had different objectives okay, we had 5 different objectives. So one of them was assessing the response of the catchment to rainfall, factoring in climate change. And that had the whole paper, you know, talking about the climate change and how it affects the water resources in the catchment. And then the second, which I just presented, was assessing the water demand for the current and future year. But now this informed the third, which was water demand allocation. And this was through modeling. And this, we used Mike Hydro. I think maybe we'll have another opportunity to present the findings of the modeling stage. And this is actually what provided us with the E-flow demand. So it was basically feeding into each other. And then the other aspect was water quality as well. And then the study also focused on the populace perception on the riverbank and buffer regulations. So it was a big study, and this is just a part of the study that I've just presented. And then Robert, you asked about the assessment of demand following districts. I think I presented this slide showing the sub-catchments. We had the Upper Mpanga, we had Mpanga, we had Middle Mpanga, and then the Lower Mpanga. And when we were modeling, that's what we were following. We were following the sub-catchments. So the districts were just used to collect data, for example, population data, for example, data on livestock, because you may not ably obtain information following the catchment boundaries, but for the sake of information, we are just using the district as the entry point. I hope that answers your question. And then Abigail, you talked about the catchment restoration measures being implemented. Yeah, I think on a personal note, I've seen success stories in the Mpanga catchment, but most especially in the Nyamwamba catchment, where the places where the ministry really implemented works. Even if you went today, you'd see a huge impact. And so we are just pitching for upscaling of these solutions, because we have the basis to say that these ones actually work. Yeah, so I would say confidently that they work. I think that is it from me. Unless there's something I've not touched, maybe Doctor can add his voice. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Maybe you could quickly go through the comment. You could quickly go through the comments that have been posted online in the chat box, and then have some quick response also generated from them for them. Yeah. Yeah, maybe as wait for him to get the comments from the chat. I'm seeing Robert's hand. Mr. Robert's hand, maybe you could have your questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Andrew and the doctor, for the good work, for the presentation that you have. For me, my question, I'm just interested in some of our colleagues have been working on the issues of scenario analysis, where you are able to analyze the different scenarios based on different cases. Maybe the business as usual scenario where you have watershed, where you have catchment measures being implemented, and then the other scenarios where you are having the other scenarios, so that you are able to predict based on the scenario analysis. So I'm asking myself whether we can use part of this information and can we do a scenario analysis where we're able to come up with different scenarios where maybe there is funding, where there is increased population and all the other components, so that maybe we can even attach issues of funding within the scenarios. I'm feeling that can also be a very, very good case where we are influencing policy. Remember, we have a 5-year planning cycle and funding cycles. So can we have this analysis done within those scenarios and maybe funding regimes so that we can have components, the economics and all the others in the scenarios? Thank you. I'm asking, I'm interested in that kind of analysis. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Robert, for putting up that, but also it deepens up our thinking, how best we can actually use this data and integrate it into the different scenarios, different variables. And to me, I think this is quite it provides a very good foundation that we can actually pitch for resources. So thank you so much, Robert. I think to me, that's more or less of guidance on how best you can actually use some of the findings to better pitch for resource mobilization. Thank you very much, Mr. Robert, for that guidance. Madam Aisha. Any question? Your microphone is unmuted. Any other questions before I hand over to the Water Resources Institute? Mr. Andrew?
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. Maybe I can respond to a question from Moses Okumo about the pollution. About the pollution, like we've said, it was a study with different objectives. However, today was presenting about assessing of water demand. And objective 4 of this study was assessing the water quality patterns in the Mpanga Catchment, and we also have interesting findings that would present if given another chance. I think that would really answer all the questions about the pollution, about the plastics, in the River Mpanga. And then the other question that is recurring is about the e-flow. Like I said, it was gotten from the modeling process using Mike Hydro, and that's also a different chapter. I really wish that would have that presented as well. Yeah, but also we are in the process of disseminating the findings, the complete report, and maybe that would answer most of these questions and maybe even other unanswered questions. Yeah, thank you.
Excuse me, Andrew and Dr. Aguma. There is a question from Caroline Andama. Excuse me, can you hear me? This is Gwendolyn. There's a question from Caroline Andama. If you can also address it, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Madam Gwendolyn. Mr. Andrew, there are some questions on the chat. Maybe you could come in and then I'll sum it up.
Okay, let me attempt to answer Caroline's question. She's asking how we can induce the projected water demand. And in one of my recommendations, or our recommendations, was innovative approaches to use of the water resources. For example, if we had everyone relying on maybe the River Mpanga, we would rather, encourage people to do rainwater harvesting, to do reuse of the wastewater, so that we don't stress the limited water resources. So that's one of the ways we can manage the skyrocketing future demand. Yes, and of course other measures as well. Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Brian.
Yeah, thank you very much. And maybe just to sum up some of the questions that have been raised before I hand over to the Water Resources Institute from the chat. Most of them have actually been addressed from the chat. Okay. Okay, there was one by Mr. Okumu thanking me, and then the concern is about consideration of polluting and degrading activities along River Mpanga. How are these negative activities affecting the water cycle over time? Thank you so much, Mr. Okumu, first of all, for acknowledging that pollution is quite detrimental. And for colleagues online, the water cycle is quite a closed system. So whatever we put in the system usually comes back to haunt us. If we are like for the agricultural practices, those that actually use herbicides, pesticides, spraying their land surfaces, as you spray, most of these contaminants infiltrate into the subsurface, finding groundwater, and sometimes the groundwater is discharged through springs or through boreholes, and it comes back us through the springs. This is where we actually pour and fetch potable water. Through the boreholes, this is where we actually pump out the water and then we ingest it. And whatever contaminants have been put usually come back to water. So the water cycle is quite a closed system, and we need to actually minimize pollution of the water bodies, and of course, making a call for everyone who's online that, for example, you could throw a plastic along the way as you're traveling throughout your car or anywhere. This plastic will find itself into the drainage system, and will also find itself maybe into a river or into a lake. And once it gets into a lake, of course, the fish will ingest the plastic. And you will go to a hotel and buy fish, and you will ingest the same fish that actually ate the plastic that you threw along your journey. So our colleagues, of course, I'm just trying to explain that the water cycle is quite very closed, and whatever we put in actually comes back at haunt us. And then the other questions have actually been addressed. Maybe if there are any other more specific questions, I would want to hand over back to the Water Resources Institute. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and maybe would have many more other opportunities to disseminate the other research papers and the assessment of water resources availability and allocation within the Mpanga catchment. Thank you very much. Madam Gwendolyn.
Thank you, Brad and Andrew. I was checking whether Dr. Chris was online, but it's okay. We want to thank, first we want to thank the people who have participated in this webinar, the whole group of people from different walks of life, from partners and from other stakeholders in Mpanga Catchment, and even other people outside the Mpanga Catchment. Just want to thank you for consistently attending the Water Resources Institute webinars that always come at the end of the year, the last Friday, at the end of the month, the last Friday of the month. Just want to thank also Brian and Andrew for presenting to us these findings, these study findings, as part of the water research or part of the applied research under the Water Resources Institute. Just want to say, please, always, whenever you want something to know what is happening, knowledge sharing, whatever you have done that you need also to share it with the public and the stakeholders. The Water Resources Institute is the place to allow you to present to the stakeholders, to the place to promote your findings and make sure that at least at the end of the day, we hope the findings and the studies and the research and the recommendation will be able to trickle down to the decision makers, and whatever we study, whatever we undertake, will be able to inform the way forward to the management of water and environment resources. Otherwise, thanks a lot. Otherwise, I want to wish you a blessed weekend. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you so much, Madam Gwendolyn, and also special appreciation to Water for People that funded the study. Thank you.